Hey Liverpool fans, have you seen the latest release? At AnfieldIndex, we've teamed up with LiverpoolFC to announce that the brand new 24-25 LFC Nike home kit and anthem jacket are out now, and they're hotter than ever. The brand new kit pays homage to the legendary Rome 1984 side, featuring sleek pinstripe detailing that brings a touch of history to our modern game. Whether you're cheering from the Kop or watching from home, you'll feel the spirit of the Reds coursing through every stitch. The best part? You can grab yours today. The new kit and training range are available in official stores, online, and through the LFC store app. Don't wait, order now and be ready to show your Liverpool pride and style. Get your hands on the new 24-25 LFC home kit and anthem jacket today. Let's make this season unforgettable. You'll never walk alone.
I'm Trent Alexander-Arnold.
I'm Curtis Jones.
I am Cody Gakpo.
Putting on the Liverpool top for the first time, it was a dream come true, and I'll never forget that moment.
The new LFC 24-25 season Nike home kit is out now.
Buy it today, along with our new goalkeeper kit and training range at your official LFC stores. Online at liverpoolfc.com/store and on the official LFC store app.
You will never walk alone.
Another day is here, and you're ready for it. What to wear? Check. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Check. Planning for what's next and how to save for it? That's where Bank of America can help. For your financial to-dos, Bank of America has experts ready to help get you closer to your goals. Get started at one of our local financial centers or 24/7 in our mobile banking app. Find a location near you at bankofamerica.com/talktous. What would you like the power to do? Mobile banking requires downloading the app and is only available for select devices. Message and data rates may apply. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another season review podcast. And today I have with the scouted lads with me, if I can get my words out. It's still early in the morning and I've not had a cup of tea. But speaking of tea, how are you doing, Karl?
Stupendous, thank you. I have indeed had 2 cups of tea, so I am 2-0 up on you for the morning.
Oh dear, 2? I mean, you wake up at human hours. I don't. But we also have Dave. How are you doing, Dave?
Good, and as the only Irish non-tea drinker in the world, I have forfeited the tea challenge.
Well, I'm nearly from Yorkshire, so I don't have that option. It is in the veins. But as you know, listeners, we do have set questions, and we'll start with you, Karl, seeing as I talked to you first. Favourite and worst matches of the season? Would you like to start with the negative or the positive?
Can we please get the negative one out of the way?
Yes, and I think everyone's answered one of the same 3 games here, so I'm gonna tally if it's one of them. Which one is it for you?
Oh God, Man United in the FA Cup.
Yep, that's one of them.
Yeah, I imagined it would be. I mean, the match itself was bad enough. It's actually my worst one just because of the situation I was in, to be honest. I was away at the time I was in Rome for the marathon, and we were on a lovely, lovely rooftop the night after it, and holy Christ, was that a crappy way to make the night go along for yourself? Obviously with a few people who were not necessarily football watchers, and certainly weren't necessarily people who get in a fuming, raging, spouting bile kind of way when football results don't necessarily go the way you want them to. So it was very, very much a case of trying not to let that overshadow the evening, shall we say. It wasn't great, I'll be honest. And yeah, result and obviously the context of knockout football and all the rest of it all kind of piled onto that, as well as the length of the day and the fact it was hot and the fact that I was nowhere near as many cocktails deep as I intended to be at that time probably didn't help either.
That's always a bad thing, especially when you're on your 7th holiday of the year. Positive. We'll do both for each of you. What's your positive of or favourite one of the year then, Karl?
My favourite one of the year. I guess probably one that people have said as well is the Fulham comeback. I do rate that one highly. I think probably in terms of late comebacks, I rated the Newcastle one slightly higher just because of the manner of it. Probably the goal scorer as well, if I'm being honest, because it was a bit of a good moment for him as well. But I think overall, my favourite would be the Chelsea one. Chelsea victory, not late comeback there. Just the Conor Bradley game. I think that was a match where lots and lots of things came together for us. The performance in terms of like our on the ball play, our attacking play, it was really, really good. It was probably the peak of this season, I think, in terms of how cohesive we looked, in terms of how we dealt with certain absences, in terms of people stepping up and producing big performances. Obviously, Bradley himself was a very, very exciting sort of breakout sort of star at that little point in time as well. So I think that would be my number one.
Good stuff. Good stuff. We have some similarities with Trev there. I think he mentioned that one, but he was over there. Dave, coming to you. Would you like to get negative or the positive?
I'll go negative first as well. There's a few contenders. That United game that Karl has mentioned obviously is one that really does kind of stick with you because we were so much better than them on the day and should have won that game very, very comfortably. But I'm going to go with the derby at Goodison. Just in terms of performance level, I thought it was pathetic from the Reds. I thought it was a genuine embarrassment how bad we were on the day, so I'll go with that one.
Yeah, and your favourite, I mean, it's a bit strange, isn't it, because the way the season ended, but we did have some excellent games, especially in that middle period, probably when we had the massive injury crisis. Every game felt like a massive victory.
Yeah, we had some really good victories. I mean, Karl's mentioned that Chelsea game. There's obviously the Newcastle game where I think we set the highest XG in Premier League history.
Yeah.
Or at least since they've been calculating XG.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd actually go back earlier in the season to the 3-0 win over Aston Villa. I think in terms of total performance, that's the best we've looked all season. I just thought we were fantastic on the day. That's a really good Villa team. Obviously, they finished fourth. And normally when you play a good team, they'll have 15 minutes where they are in control of the game, regardless of what else happens. Like when we play big teams away, we'll always have a 15-minute spell. When we play the likes of Arsenal and United and whoever else, regardless of how the game is going, the side who's sort of under the cosh will always have 15 to 20 minutes where they're the better team. Because the team that's winning or the team that's been in control, they'll drop off. There'll be a period of lull where they'll just, be looking basically to recover and sort of get a second wind. But in that Villa game, there was nothing like that. We controlled it from start to finish, and they were limited to a couple of moments in the game. I think we were absolutely sensational on the day. Núñez, off the back of the Newcastle game where he'd obviously got the 2 goals, didn't score in this one, but massively influenced the win. He won the corner that led to the Szoboszlai goal. He had the shot that hit the post that came back and hit Cash and went in. And he was involved in the Salah goal as well. I'd go with that one. I think we were brilliant that day.
Yeah, that feels so long ago.
It was the fourth game of the season.
Oh dear. Deary me, another lifetime. Dave, I'll stick with you. Your initial reaction to the Klopp news, obviously, it's kind of weird for us. Obviously, Karl works in the industry as a journalist. We do all the podcasts and articles, etc. So we're kind of always surrounded by Liverpool news, but I don't think anyone saw this coming other than that press conference was weirdly on the Thursday and everyone was like, okay, that's a bit strange. But just to drop that bombshell at the end of January where I think everyone was just ramping up for I think it was the Chelsea game, if I remember correctly. Yeah, what was your initial reaction when that bomb dropped?
I mean, my first knowledge that this was happening was a text from Karl, because we were meant to podcast that morning. And Karl texted and said, with what's going on, we might have to push back till later in the day. And I was like, what's he talking about? I have no idea what's gone on. And I opened Twitter and it was literally just all this stuff. And I was like, I still don't really know what's gone on. And then I saw the video. So surprise, obviously. It wasn't something I thought was even a possibility at that point. If he'd announced that he, maybe later in the year that he was planning on leaving, it wouldn't have surprised me that much. I'd had a feeling last season that he might be getting towards the end of his time at the club. Then we obviously did the sort of semi-rebuild in the summer. And I thought, okay, well, he seems a bit more reinvigorated. He seems refreshed. But then, surprised for sure. But I was kind of able to deal with it and cope with it quite quickly. So by the time we got round to a week later, I'd sort of just made my peace with it. And by the time we got to the end of the season, I wasn't as upset as everybody else was, because I'd already dealt with it 5 months earlier, 4 months earlier, however long it had been. But massive surprise when it was announced first.
Yeah, Karl, same question for you. I mean, Dave just mentioned there, obviously, we had plans. Those plans got put back a smidge, if I remember correctly. But, it was a bit of a mad day.
It was. I mean, we've spoken about it before, but I think definitely shock was the first thing. I actually did do the double checking in case, because I saw it from the official club site. I just happened to be on Twitter at that time when it came through. And I did double check just in case I was on a fake one, because pay for the blue tick now and you can change your name and blah, blah, blah. So I just had to double check and really, really make sure that that's where it came from. But then, of course, it was everywhere within about a minute and a half. And I mean, that's probably the quietest I've been at work for about 30 seconds while I processed what the hell this was all going on about. I mean, it was crazy. It was so unexpected.
So the media didn't even get a heads up that this was coming?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Not one whisper of it at all. And obviously it must have been going on for a while, but they kept it very, very tight to the chest. But everything, obviously I message you guys normally. I don't really put it out anywhere, but just so that we can prepare and stuff, like when Anna Slot was getting confirmed recently, or when contracts are being renewed or anything like that. I'll message us so that we can plan things and stuff ahead of time for when it's going to be released. But on this, not one word, nothing at all. It was so out of the blue. I was honestly in complete shock. I didn't expect it in the slightest. And I thought if and when it did happen, it would be at the end of the season, not partway through it. Certainly not at the point where we were doing, still the potential to do quite good things this season. So, there wasn't really much reaction time from my perspective, because as I say, I was at work, and basically after the first minute of holy fuck, it was basically all hands on deck. There was loads and loads to do of it. The reactions, lots of news lines on it, obviously. So there was pretty much a non-stop morning for me within about 5 minutes of it. So it was later in the day probably where we had the first proper conversations at work about it, because there's 2 or 3 of us, three of us who support Liverpool on the sports desk. So obviously we were discussing it a little bit, but then everyone else as well, because it's a huge, huge story in football. And then that probably point, and then the first pods that we did afterwards was where you kind of process it a little bit. And I was like you, Dave, that part of it was very, very quickly over and done with for me, because I was so in the middle of it and so having to talk about it a lot and think about it and really put your thoughts in order kind of thing. So by the time it gets to, April and May and now the end of the season, I know it's got to be done, but it doesn't really feel too much for me. I can't say that I was too many emotions or anything when the final day came around. I didn't even go to Anfield in the end, as you both know. I went to the Arsenal match instead. That was a choice made a little while back. So I was perfectly fine with it, to be honest. Obviously, it's still a big thing, and acknowledge that, but from an emotional perspective, that's not where I am anymore at all. Not from a a Liverpool point of view either. Now it's very, very much about looking forward and everything, which is quite an exciting moment to be in as well.
That's the thing. Like, it kind of, because there was such a long process from when he announced it until when he left, by the end of it, I was almost just like, I'm just looking forward to the change now. You know, obviously you want to honour Jurgen in the right way, but emotionally, you dealt with all the I dealt with all the bad stuff, being upset about it or whatever, and was just excited then for the change because we knew who was coming in. It wasn't like there was any sort of apprehension about, who's it going to be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, is this going to be a messy search? We could all think back to Spurs a couple of years ago when it took them months to find a new manager. You know, we've seen what's going on with Bayern at the moment, where they've been turned down by half the managers in Europe. There's, you know, it wasn't like that. There was no uncertainty. We never had a period where we were deep enough into the season to start worrying about next season.
Because the Edwards news helped as well, I think.
I was just going to say that whole thing made it more, not acceptable, that's not the right thing, but less of a problem, I think, that Jurgen was leaving, because it had to be a completely fresh start as well. And we knew that there had to be changes, obviously from Schmadke anyway, but then it became about the whole club hierarchy, which I think made it a much, much more...
That's the thing, and the way it kind of came out as well, you had the Edwards news, and then a couple of weeks later, the Richard Hughes news. So you're like, okay, I can see the structure being put back together. And then obviously there was a lot of talk about the manager, and there was, you know, the links to Xabi, and then he ruled himself out, and then there was all the links to Amorim. And then obviously they came to Arnie, and that was done quite quickly. Like it was leaked or reported on, I think, a Sunday, I want to say. And then by the following week, it was pretty much done and dusted that it was him. So it was the way they were able to kind of do it. It was like 3 different announcements of Edwards, Hughes, and then him. And you're like, okay, now I can see where we go next. So now it's very much just a matter of, and by that point, obviously we'd fallen out of contention to win the league by the time Slot was not confirmed, but reported that we'd agreed terms with Feyenoord. You're kind of like, right, well, that's it. Like, now we know where we're going. So, you know, it's just about saying goodbye to Jurgen and celebrating his time at the club and not having to be, you know, overly emotional about it.
Yeah, and I think even Klopp himself I think he said it was November he came to that decision. So I think it feels like he processed it, because when you see the footage of the ones from Dortmund, he's a blubbering mess, isn't he? Whereas the Liverpool one, he's cool, calm and collected. And then almost the passing of the torch moment for Arne Slot. He seemed like he was more ready for that move possibly than the Dortmund one, whereas the Dortmund one, it was a nightmare season kind of thing. But yeah, it was a very strange time in January when he announced it, and then the final day was just a strange feeling rather than a sad feeling.
Yeah, 100%.
But anyway, onwards. I was going to make a pun about tears when Karl mentioned Arsenal. At least you got to see some tears on the final day, but I wanted to bring it back. It was a good pun. But we'll move on to our awards for Player and Young Player of the Year. And Dave, I'll stick with you. Should we start with Young Player? Because there does seem to be a good handful of choices. I think there is a main choice for most people I've spoke to, but there's a handful of choices. But my first question, do you count Harvey Elliott? Because he has been in the first team for about 3 years now.
See,
how do you look at it?
If we look at age, obviously he is a young player. He's 21. So from that regard, yeah. But then you look at how many games the lad has played, and he's played 165 games in his career, 119 of them for us, 42 on the loan at Blackburn, and he played 3 times for Fulham. So at that kind of level of experience, no, then I'm not going to include him, because he was a senior player last year as well.
Yeah.
Like last year he played 46 games. So, you know, I'm not going to include Harvey. I'm going to look at the young players that have actually kind of come through this year. And I think there's two that really did stand out. I mean, it's important to mention that, James McConnell played a good part for us. Jayden Danns played his part for us. And obviously, Bobby Clark played his part for us. But the two that stand out are Conor Bradley and Jarrell Quansah. I think they both had just excellent seasons for us when thrown into the fire. Neither of them will have expected to play anywhere near as many games. Conor Bradley, 23 appearances, 17 starts in all competitions. Jarrell Quansah, 33 games, 27 starts. I'm going to go for Quansah because for me, centre-back is a harder position to play than right-back. It's an even harder position to play at Liverpool when you're left so exposed. He came on at Newcastle in very, very difficult circumstances and looked completely at home and has looked completely at home ever since. He did have a spell when the rest of the team started to kind of fall apart around him. He did have a bit of a spell where he had a couple of ropey moments, not ropey performances, but ropey moments. We all remember that pass to Bruno Fernandes at Old Trafford.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, I just think he has been absolutely outstanding. So I'm going to go for Jarrell Quansah.
Same names for you, Karl?
I'm Trent Alexander-Arnold.
I'm Curtis Jones.
I am Cody Gakpo.
Putting on the Liverpool top for the first time, it was a dream come true, and I'll never forget that moment.
The new LFC 24-25 season Nike home kit is out now.
Buy it today, along with our new goalkeeper kit and training range at your official LFC stores. Online at liverpoolfc.com/store and on the official LFC store app.
You will never walk alone.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Very definitely. I think it's fair to say that Bradley hit a higher ceiling during the season with one or two performances, but I think Quansah's were way more consistent across the board. There were more obvious mistakes, I think, as well from Quansah. I know we've got two defenders here, but when you're playing centre-back, you're obviously more exposed that if you do make an error, it's going to lead to a big chance, it's going to lead to a goal. That's just part of learning, unfortunately. You've got to give them the opportunity. Back in the day, sort of 90s or so, we probably would have seen centre-backs get their first games at right-back to keep them out of the way of the most dangerous positions. But right-back's a really different role now, and you can't do that anymore. So if you're going to play them, it has to be at centre-back. And given that he'd had such minimal experience of playing anywhere near the level he has done this year, I think he's been excellent. I really do. like so composed, so at ease with himself and what he can and can't do, and fine taking the odd risk that you don't necessarily want a young player to do in an important moment, and maybe they don't all come off. But again, you have to let them do that to learn and to see where they can get to. We mentioned a couple of times towards the end of the campaign, we'd rather just see him play to know what he can do on a regular basis against proper Premier League forwards of all different kinds. Because even if it turns out that he's not that good, we still need to know it, So I'm really happy with what Quansah has done this year. I think he's played way better than we have any right to expected him to. And like I say, the consistency level that he showed more or less across the board, I think is a really, really important trait which suggests he can be a Premier League defender in future.
What an 18 months for him, though.
No, mad, isn't it?
January 2023, he never played a game of senior football. He goes on loan to Bristol Rovers, plays 16 games, is managed by Joey Barton, and now he's in the England squad, having just had a very, very successful season for Liverpool. And, of course, he entered the season as the 5th centre-back. But Matip getting injured and Gomez been needed at full-back, plus Ibu's kind of ongoing injury issues, forced him into a position that we had no right to put him in. I mean, in many ways, it's poor squad management that he was forced into that kind of situation. But the lad rose to the challenge and excelled. So, you couldn't be happier for him. And nothing phases him. Nothing phases him. Like, he scores on the final day of the season. He doesn't even celebrate. It's just like, yeah, fair enough.
So just to note a couple of things, because obviously you've just mentioned Quansah's in the England squad, the provisional squad ahead of the Euros. He's been a part of the England youth setup all the way through his career.
Yeah.
From under 16 level all the way through. He was in I can't remember if it was the under 19 Euros or the under 20 Euros, whichever one they do. He was in that and played. Obviously played quite a big part. I think he scored in the semis, I think it was. This was now going to be 2 summers ago. So he has been, from an international perspective, included and part of the group which is progressing there. But that's very, very different to being part of a senior club member. And like you say, he's basically ended the season second choice defender.
Yeah, I think the stat from UP earlier in the week was he finished more 90 minutes than any other centre-back other than Virgil. Which might just mean Ibu's made of Pringles, which he kind of is. But it is mad, the journey you just mentioned there. But yeah, finishes the season as the partner to Van Dijk. Excellent season. Excellent season. Karl, sticking with you for player of the year, there's been a lot of names mentioned, and I think there is, well, for me anyway, there's one obvious choice, but is there the names in the running for you or in your thought process?
I mean, I think that we've had a large number of players who have played really well this season in condensed periods, but it's been quite limited to maybe 2 months or so. Like, there was a period where Salah was brilliant for a couple of months. There was a period where Jota was ridiculously important for us when we weren't necessarily playing well, but he was. But again, you're looking at about a month, 6 weeks maybe. Szoboszlai obviously started on fire. McAllister looked absolutely elite. But again, these are all 1-2 month periods. Personally, I think the only one who has kept the level of play up almost all season long is Van Dijk. He would be my player of the year by quite a stretch, to be honest, just because of that, again, sheer consistency, sheer reliability, availability. I think he's been very, very close to his best level. Maybe not the best that he was at his absolute peak, but the best that he's maybe got now. Van Dijk is my Liverpool player of the year by some distance, I think.
Same for you, Dave, I presume. And is there any other names you'd throw into the consideration?
Up until probably April, I would have said not to win it, but to be a top 3 pick. I would have had Joe Gomez, because I thought from the start of the season up until about April, he was tremendous for us, filling in wherever we needed. I mean, the guy went and played defensive midfield a couple of games. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. You know, he played a whole bunch of games at left back, a whole bunch of games at right back. I think he had one game at centre back this past season, which has been his primary position for the last few years. So I think just from a consistency point of view and a versatility point of view, I think Joe just deserves mention. But it's Virgil. I mean, it's Virgil, and it's not close for me. Our starting goalkeeper is Alisson Becker. He missed 10 Premier League games this year. Our starting right back is Trent. He started 25 of 38 Premier League games. Our starting left back is Andy Robertson. He missed he started 18 of 38 games. Our starting partner for Virgil is Ibu. He started 17. So he's never really had the best of the best that we have to offer around him. He's had 3 different left backs in Robbo, Costas and Joe, all play significant chunks this season. He had 3 different centre-back partners in Ibu, Matip and Kwanzaa. We had 3 different right backs, in Trent, Conor Bradley and Gomez. We had 3 different holding midfielders throughout the league campaign in Endo, who was the best of the pick in that position, but only started 20 league games. Alexis, who was out of position and not suited to that role, and Joe Gomez when he filled in there. We lost Curtis Jones for a good chunk of the season as well. He only started 14 league games, and Curtis was a player that brought control and some defensive stability to that midfield. And obviously 2 different goalkeepers, chopping and changing everywhere around him. Very few times did we have a settled 3-4 games in a row where the same defensive group was sent out there. And yet, week after week, Virgil was just imperious. He obviously had the ropey start with the Newcastle game and then the 2-game ban that followed. But I just think he was brilliant all season. Got a little bit tired, I think, towards the end. And there was 1 or 2 performances that weren't of the normal Virgil level. But when you look at the circumstances around him, I think it's understandable. Defensively, we were not particularly good this year, but that was not a Virgil issue. That was an everything else issue. I think the reason we only conceded 41 goals is him. So, yeah, for me, he's the player of the season, and it isn't close.
Yeah, I mean, when he's good, we're good. I think that's the baseline of it. He's in conversation for our best player, but he's certainly our most important player. I don't think anyone would debate that. But to debate, Dave, I'll start with you. We have 3 players with contracts coming up in the coming year. They are probably 3 of our best players, certainly in the top 5. We'll go in reverse order if I've got it listed there, because that feels like the easiest. We'll start with Van Dijk. Renew, keep, or sell. You've kind of already done the transfer committee pot, so you've kind of discussed these already. But let's go from it 2 ways, because committee, you obviously thinking as the club. What would you do with Van Dijk?
Oh, renew and keep.
Yeah.
It's not even a question for me. He's still by far the best centre-back in the world, best centre-back in the league by a comfortable margin this season. I know that, people will point to his age, and, that's fair enough. He's, I think, turning 33 this year. But the performance level is absolutely incredible. And when we look at someone like Thiago Silva, who will turn 40 this year, still playing in the Premier League this past season, never ever as good as Virgil, but had the intelligence to get himself through games. I don't see why Virgil can't play another 4 years at a high level. So for me, it's the easiest one of the bunch. You keep, and you continue to have him as the linchpin of your defence.
Yeah, I think everyone said the same. Karl, same for you, or is there any, not doubts, but questions and cashing in questions, etc.?
The only question I would have is over how many years is the best fit to give him. Like, if he's going up to 25 already, it feels like either 27 or 28 is where you have to go.
Lifetime.
Sorry?
Lifetime contract, that's what we go with.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm with Dave. I don't think that there's any danger of him like dropping off significantly between now and, let's say, 2028. But salary-wise and how the team is regenerated around that point, and maybe he does drop off quicker than we expect. 27's probably the sweet spot for the club. I suspect that his advisors will push for longer than that. But I think ultimately you just have to keep Virgil for now and don't worry that much about if there's a big drop-off from what is probably still the world's best centre-back 3 years from now. Like, it may well be that if you have to give him a 4-year deal or, extend for a further 3 years, that by the final year, you're overpaying him. But he's given us so much more than he's been worth or has been paid for, or that we paid for him initially in the preceding, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it is. I just think you got to sort of accept that a little bit and not be too bogged down in it. And I'm sure that there'll be loads of discussions and loads of data-driven arguments between the new board or whatever. But I just think that it's still a sizable gap between what Van Dijk does in defence and what the vast majority of the rest of Europe's elite defenders bring to their team. I think our bigger focus should be on who his most regular partner is.
Yeah, build that defence around him. Yeah, so that when he does have the drop-off, you mitigate that by having an elite left-back next to him and an elite centre-back next to him who can, from him carrying the defence, they can, if need be, carry him a little bit in that last year. Like I don't even think it would be carrying him. I just think it would be a partnership. Equals is what you get to eventually. No, I just mean that last season, like if he does have, let's say he has the Stefan Ancho drop off where overnight he becomes unplayable. If you've at least got two elite players either side of him, maybe with him just able to manage his way through games, that might mitigate. But like, the guy is still world class and he wants to be here. And we've all lived through times where we've had great players and you knew they wanted to go. Like, you knew Suarez was leaving. You knew Coutinho would leave. So when we have a player like him still at that level, I just think you push the boat out to keep him. And if he wants a contract till 2028, I just think you give it to him. Because the bottom line of it is, if you get to 2027 and you're thinking, right, the drop has started and maybe we'd like to get out from underneath this, there will be an out somewhere. Like, you'll find a move for him if it's Saudi or wherever. You will find a way to get him off the books if needed.
Back to Celtic.
Yeah, he can play at Celtic till he's 50. He'd be fine.
Go to Ajax with 50-year-old Jordan Henderson.
Still trying to close down that goalkeeper.
Just shouting at the crowd from the side. Dave, coming to you for the slightly more debatable one is Trent. There seems to be a lot more question marks with him because, as you've mentioned on numerous podcasts now, all the stuff going around with his brother, mentioning Steve McManaman, going to Real Madrid, etc. But there's even more questions beyond that. Where do we play him? How does Arne Slot fit him in? Is he going to actually try as a right back? Are we going to play him as a midfielder? Are we going to try him as a 10 or a winger or whatever? There's quite a lot of questions around Trent, but the talent's undeniable. The connection with the club's undeniable. It's a weird one. We have to, feels for me anyway, we have to keep him, unless he doesn't sign the contract, obviously. But then that kind of only starts the next question.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of one cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
I'm Trent Alexander-Arnold.
I'm Curtis Jones.
I am Cody Gakpo.
Putting on the Liverpool top for the first time, it was a dream come true, and I'll never forget that moment.
The new LFC 24-25 season Nike home kit is out now.
Buy it today, along with our new goalkeeper kit and training range at your official LFC stores. Online at LiverpoolFC.com/store and on the official LFC store app.
You will never walk alone.